Hey everyone, hope you're well, and welcome to Awesome Solo of the Day and How to Play It, Tuesday edition, wherein we'll chit-chat a little bit about the solo, guitarist, and or band in question, and then I'll show you guys how to play it. Sweet, yeah? Well then, Randy Bachman, the Guess Who, and the solo to the band's 1970 track, American Woman. Absolutely classic. Speaking of which, hey, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, why the aren't the Guess Who in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I mean, really. Eligible since 1991, the Guess Who has never been so much as nominated, despite scoring 6 top 10 hits in the United States, including 2 number ones, both American Woman and No Sugar Tonight, in the late 60s and early 70s. Now, of course, the Hall is somewhat of a joke, but really, in my opinion, this one's a huge slight on my Canadian brethren. Now, there's a theory that the reason for this is that the members of the Hall, mostly American critics, historians, industry leaders, artists, look at the Guess Who as some sort of late 60s, early 70s bubblegum band, lumped in with the likes of Tommy James and the Shondells and the Archies or the Monkees. This is so far from the truth to be laughable, yet here we are. Us Canadians look upon the Guess Who as one of the greatest classic rock bands that our country has ever produced, and one of the few to ever break as big as they did stateside in the US. They deserve much more historical respect from the classic rock and roll fraternity than being called a 60s bubblegum band. It's rather absurd, really. And that ends my rant. Anyway, American Woman, the number 1 hit, American Woman, composed on stage one night in Ontario as Randy Bachman was messing about with a new riff after changing strings and tuning up, when he was joined by lead vocalist Burton Cummings with some on-the-spot improvised vocals. The boys were so pleased with the improvised number that they tracked down a kid that they spotted in the audience who had been bootlegging the performance that night. Bootleg now in hand, they relearned their own jam, tightened the whole thing up with a proper arrangement and some more coherent lyrics, and American Woman was born, ready for its date with rock and roll history the following year when it would go top 10 all over the world. The track American Woman also has the ignoble distinction of being my least favorite cover version of a song of pretty much all time. The Lenny Kravitz abomination, of course, and I even like Lenny Kravitz, but holy hell do I hate this cover of this one. Simply awful, hurts my ears. Funny thing about Lenny Kravitz's version is that he didn't include the classic solo in his take on the track, or any solo for that matter, I don't think. At least I don't think it has a solo, but I'm not about to go listen to it to find out. When asked about this by Randy Bachman himself, he stated that he was going to add the solo, but the fuzz tone of this solo was so distinct he found it impossible to replicate, so he left it out. I think I pretty much nailed the tone on this one myself. Was quite pleased with my performance of this one, tone and all. Regardless, that is about enough rambling and ranting. Sorry about that. I'm passionate about this one, obviously, as I'm a huge fan of this great Canadian band. Let's learn how to play this solo, shall we? Let's close in here a little bit on the fretboard. All right then, the solo to American Woman, the main solo, not the intro solo, the longer mid-song solo by Randy Bachman and the Guess Who. We are in standard tuning with this one. We're working in the key of E major, as American Woman is in E major. And for the solo, we're using the Mixolydian mode, or scale if you prefer, mostly here at the 12th fret position, on either side of it a little bit as well. I'm going to show you the E Mixolydian here at the 12th fret position. E Mixolydian, 12, 14, 16, same, 13, 14 of the G, 12, 14, 15 of the B, bottom string, same as the top, 12, 14, 16. E Mixolydian. And so the solo starts like this. So I just want to point one thing out here before we get started. There's a lot of bends in this solo, even though it's not a very long solo. There's a lot of bends in it, and every one of these bends is going to have some vibrato on it. You know, some nice even vibrato. During this tutorial, when I'm playing licks, you know, at different speeds, I'm slowing them down, I'm playing them at regular speed. It's really hard to get a consistent vibrato when you're slowing things down. You know, you end up doing that and it really doesn't have any effectiveness whatsoever. But just know that all of these bends have some nice vibrato on them. You know, and but I'm not going to put vibrato on every one of these notes. But that's the beginning. We're on the 11th fret of the G string, giving it a nice slow full step bend. And then we're going to grab the 9 of the B, and then right back into another full step bend of the 11. Now, some people think this starts with just 3 bends, like that, but it doesn't. The middle one is not bent. It's a static note. Kind of like that. Now, while we still have that bent, we're going to pick it and release it off to 9. Back onto 11 and back off to 9. Then we're going to move the whole thing up here 3 spots to the 12/14s, bend that 14 of the G a full step. Do it again, pick it, release it off to 12. Back on to 14, back off to 12. But now, when we go back off to this 12, we're going to raise it a half step. We're going to let that 12 ring just ever so slightly, and then we're going to raise it a half step, because that G note there at the 12th fret is not in the E mixolydian, but the next note is. So he's basically just using that as a passing note before raising it to the proper note. Kind of like that. With his index finger. And then we're into this. So now we're grabbing the 14 of the B, giving it a half step bend. We're bending it up to that note, 15. Now we're going to grab that 15 with our pinky, pick it, and then string skip up to the 14 of the D for a little string skipping lick. After you hit that 14, you're going to grab the 12 of the G and slide it into 13. Now we're back to the 14 of the B again for that little lick there, all on the 14th fret. So it's bend, pick, half steps, and then one final bend. Bend, pick, bend. And then the string skipping lick again. Into this. So now we're going to slide 15 to 17 twice. Slide, pick. And then we're going to do it. And then we're going to do it again. But this time we're not going to slide. We're going to hammer on. Into this. So now a double hit at 17 of the B. 15, 17 of the high E. Double bend, full step. And now again, we're going to keep that bent, pick it, and release it off to 15. And then you're going to release it off to 15, back onto 17, back off to 15. Double bend, pick, release off to 15. Back onto 17, back off to 15. And then resolve the whole thing to the 17 of the B. Into this. So a little trill between 15 and 17. Back it up to 14. Back it up to 12. Full step bend at 14 of the G. Now we're going to give that bend another double pump. Into this. Just 12, 14. half step, release, off to 12, and then 14 back to 12 to finish that little lick up. Now we're going to go 12, 14 again, back into another half step bend. Now we're going to pick that bent note again, release it off to 12, back onto 14, slide it into 17. And that finishes up the solo. Let's run through the whole thing before we're done. And that, my friends, is how you play the solo to American Woman. I certainly hope you found that helpful. Were you looking to learn this classic solo from 1970, January 1970, to be precise? And hope you're well out there in your little guitar corner of the world, wherever that may be. And take care of yourselves, those around you, and we will see you next time. Cheers.